I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband, and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted, and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called back / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency, so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong. I sustained very bad injuries to my face this month. I'm in the stage of healing when the scar tissue has formed, but it's still very tender, new skin. I'm going to have very obvious facial scarring for the rest of my life. The injury starts about an inch above my hairline, goes down over my brow so that on part, hair will not grow. It continues down my cheek where it is deepest. I'll always probably have an indentation in the fullest part of my cheek. Then it continues to my jawline. In some ways it's okay. I'm happy it's just cosmetic damage. My friends are super reassuring, telling me how badass and sick it's gonna look. They say I'm still as hot as ever, now a little more sexy and mysterious. But in some ways it really sucks. I know that I'm always gonna be seen first as the girl with a scar, and it feels especially bad when people look at me differently. This week, I had to fly home for a family thing. It was a plan I'd made long before my injury. I wasn't really looking forward to the pity or people making a big deal of it. I'd rather it not be acknowledged. I'd also met with my dermatologist, who said that I was at the stage of scar tissue formation, that I no longer should be dressing the wounds. The skin was healing, and instead I needed to be applying topical cream and Vaseline to keep the site clean and moist. It also looks a bit ugly. The building scar tissue is very red and tender, and with the Vaseline over it, looks slick and shiny. So I get on this flight, I have the window seat, and I put on my headphones and drift off to sleep when the plane is still boarding. I wake up to this kid, maybe 4 years old, sat next to me, throwing a tantrum. I didn't catch the first part of it, and I honestly couldn't understand what he was yelling about. His father said to me, "Can you cover that injury?" I said that my dermatologist recommends I don't, so no, I don't think I will. He started snapping at me saying, "There is no need to be so rude. That injury is graphic and it's scaring my little one." I said, "This is my face. The only damn face I've got. It sucks being told I'm so ugly I can't show my goddamn face in public." He started to backtrack saying, "Just until it's healed," and I said, "It'll always be with me. Maybe teach some Compassion and respect instead of telling a girl half your damn age what you think about her face. That's rude. He actually got up after that and I think went to a stewardess about a seat change because a young couple came to sit next to me on a few minutes instead. I've gotta admit I felt so low that I put on my sunglasses and had a quiet cry for a few minutes. I have a home daycare. I like to think I'm pretty lenient, but I do have one big rule: don't make me the bad guy. I understand we might have different rules, but don't make your child resent me by not backing me up. Anyway, another rule is I don't allow outside toys or electronics. Kids can bring the stuffed animals for nap if they're sleeping on rest mats, but I don't want to be responsible if something gets broken. Years ago, I used to let kids bring whatever. Then a cheap McDonald's toy broke by accident, kid was upset and mom got mad at me. So now it's a hard rule. Most are okay with it. But I have a new kid, whose mom wanted him to bring his tablet because he needs it. I said sorry, but no. I'm not going to be responsible for it. We went back and forth, but finally she just says fine. But every morning, he's crying because she took his tablet from him in the car. She always gives me this look and says, "Miss Lucy says no tablet." I always try to say we have plenty of toys, but the kid spends the whole morning sulking. I've talked to mom, asked her to leave it at home and not even put it in the car, but she says he needs it. It's been a month and yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kid came in crying as usual. I tried my usual redirection, which didn't work. Mom was giving me a look of, "See what you did?" Then she had the nerve to say to him, "I know you need your tablet, we've talked about this before, Miss Lucy is strict." That pissed me off. I ended up telling her to take him home right then and there. She was shocked and tried to stammer. He was my first kid of the day, so there was no scene. I just handed back his backpack, said he was no longer a student of mine, and began to pack his extra clothes and the sippy cup he kept. Mom was in tears as she left. My husband thinks she was right. I'm too strict and should have broken policy instead of causing drama. There was no medical need for the tablet. It was all just that he wanted it. I'm not making a waiver for electronics. That won't stop other issues with the tablets, such as jealousy and drama, so my "don't make me the bad guy" rule has been misunderstood, partly as I worded it poorly. I don't expect blind obedience. No one has to agree with my rules. They can challenge them, to me. But to their kid, I'd rather them explain everyone has different rules and that while they're with me, things will be different. I do the same with parents who have different rules than mine. I never say they're wrong or strict. I say that we have different rules at school and to listen to mom and dad. This is also a policy for pacifiers, bottles, and potty training. I'll approach any of these milestones when you ask, but you have to be working on it at home too. The kid won't progress if they only go pee on the potty at home. And the child was not autistic or non-verbal. If he was, an exception would be made. I returned her money for the last few days of January and texted an apology for terminating without notice, and said I hope she was able to find care. She said she left him at her mom's. She also asked if there was any way I'd reconsider, and I said no. We had a long phone call and no minds were changed, but it was the ending we should have had. Me and my girlfriend have never fought, we get along fine. We have been living together for 9 years now, and have been dating for 12 years. We have a healthy sex life, we both have decent jobs that bring in decent money. In the past we talked about marriage a lot and would often joke about what our wedding would be like. Yes, I know how stupidly lame this sounds, however we always agreed we needed to settle down first. We bought a house about a year and a half ago, and were finally able to settle down. Our work schedules normalized, we were able to remove a huge waste of time from commuting. And we were finally able to take various activities after work, e.g., dancing classes, cooking classes, etc. We were able to finally settle down. Finally we decided to take a week off and unplug on the week of 12-year anniversary. She wanted to go camping and hiking, and do the things we used to do when we were first dating. Unbeknownst to her, I secretly decided to pick the exact same area where we met to do our hiking / camping trip. 2 weeks ago as we are leaving she realizes where we are going and becomes ecstatic, and gushes about how romantic I am. More or less everything seems perfect. We do our hike, and we unpack, set up, and by sundown everything feels perfect. So I decided to pop the question. This is where everything kind of falls apart. I ask her, and she just says no. We literally went from I love yous to the single most awkward silence I have ever had in my life in the time span of about a minute. We sat there kind of not saying anything before she says she is tired and goes to bed. She basically proceeds to cry herself to sleep while I sat there doing nothing. I basically didn't sleep, and the next morning, she says she wants to go home. So we pack up and have a really awkward 3-hour hike back to our car. There were a few times where things kind of felt normal and we were joking around like we used to be for a bit. On the way back home, we are talking and chatting normally, but it just feels awkward. At one point we stopped for coffee and asked if she wanted to talk about what happened, and all I got was a curt no. This is followed by another extremely long silence for the rest of the drive home. We finally get home and I unpack everything while she goes off to bed. She is going to bed. Cue more crying. I tried really hard to talk to her, but she pretty much told me that she just needs time to be alone and think. The next day she tells me she is going to take some time and see her family, which is literally on the other side of the country. It has been about 2 weeks since I dropped her off at the airport. She sent me a few messages to tell me she is fine, and that she needs some more time to think. Her best friend has been asking me every other day about what is going on with her, since she hasn't really been responding at all. I know she is okay, though, due to her posting some pictures of her and her family on Instagram. But it just feels really weird. I am an absolute giant mess. I just don't quite understand what is going on. None of my friends have really offered me anything of value. I just feel if I didn't ask the question everything would be absolutely fine, and I don't really understand what is going on. I keep wanting to grab her laptop to try and figure out anything. I am not close to her parents at all, but I trust her and want to respect her space, but I don't know when she is coming back. I even sent her a message this morning, and I know she saw the message and received it, but hasn't replied. Also, her work has called me this morning asking about where she is. Apparently she had taken an extra week off last week, but she was supposed to be in yesterday. Now everything feels like it is falling apart and I have no idea what to do. The reason why it took so long for us to get married is we both agreed we wouldn't move to the next step until we finished the following. We both finished school. For her, that wasn't until 2 years ago. We both had stable jobs. We had a place where we could agree would be good enough to take stuff to the next step. We both had decent working hours. For a long time she was doing her residency and we more or less worked opposite shifts. We did talk about marriage and kids, and both agreed it would be part of the next step after we got settled.